Vanakkam. Welcome to the final session of our course on SAP Production Planning. We are concluding the course with a discussion on some standard configurations required for SAP Production Planning and Execution. Here we listed out some important configurations to be done as part of SAP Production Planning configuration. Like for general, what are the configurations for BOM, for routing, work center, demand management, and shop floor control. In this session, we discussed few but basically required configuration settings. You may explore further based on your business needs. We'll start with calendars. For all planning and scheduling purpose, calendars are defined in system. First, national holidays are defined. With these national holidays and other individual holidays, holiday calendar is defined. With that, factory calendar is defined. So now to create the calendar, the menu path is shown here, or use the transaction SCAL. So from here, use the public holidays radio button icon. Define either fixed holiday or floating holiday. Like there are different holidays in different countries. Then create the calendar ID with the validity period and assign the holidays. Finally, create factory calendar, and then we have to assign the holiday calendar and also the working days to the factory calendar, so that if a factory is working on weekly 5 days or weekly 6 days, those things we can assign here. Also, you have to assign the factory calendar to the plant to complete the settings of the plant. Next, we will discuss about the configuration related to the material master, especially on the MRP. Now, we discussed MRP type determines the type of planning to be done during material requirement planning. It may be regular material requirement planning like exploding bill of material, or consumption based planning, or forecast based planning. Those MRP types are defined through these configuration settings. The menu path is shown here. See, I am showing many places menu path, not directly the transaction, because you have to practice to do this configuration through menu path so that you can learn a lot. Even during our discussion of regular sessions, I was showing menu path always, because exploring transaction through menu path will give you many opportunities to improve your knowledge. So always explore them through menu paths. Now when you come to the MRP type, the MRP types where we have to define the parameters here shown is like a PD MRP type. Here we have to define what is MRP procedure, how the firming type has to happen, and then what are the forecast indicator to be used. Like this, some parameters are there. Next is MRP controller. As we discussed, MRP controller is a person or group of personnel responsible for monitoring metal availability. Every metal that is relevant to planning run must be assigned with the MRP controller. Right? MRP controller is configured through the menu path shown here. So example of one MRP controller is shown here, right? So now we will select MRP controller. We see the MRP controller which is already defined. You can also define a new MRP controller as which is shown here by clicking the new entries button. You can also determine a special person for background processing who receives a mail if a goods receipt was posted for a missing part. Only thing, you must enter the mail name of the person in the field entitled in the receipt name. There if you define it, then the mail will come to them when there is a missing part arrival. Next is the lot sizing procedure. Lot sizing procedure defines how to accumulate and give proposed quantity from planning process. The configuration is done through the menu path shown here. The lot sizing procedure is very important to understand, and this concept has to be clearly explored by the consultants and also the users, and use them properly so that we get the proper planning frequency, quantity, and in the regular intervals. Details of exact lot sizing procedure are shown here, and then lot sizing for monthly also shown here. Please explore the settings of all lot sizing procedures like this and understand the impact so that you can use them properly. In MRP2 view, we have procurement type and a special procurement type. procurement type is whether you produce inside or you buy outside. But there is some special procurement also. We discussed now different types of special procurement types. These special procurement types are configured through this menu bar shown here. The special procurement types may be transfer requirements from one plant to another plant, or make the material issue from another plant, or create the direct process order in another plant or in its own plant, or define the phantom item. Like this, there are different things are there. Please again go through all these things. See the settings like procurement type, special procurement, what are the BOM components, how to define the plant, issuing plant, those things. Next is the schedule margin key. Schedule margin key is used to define the float, that is the cushioning period in days before and after actual production date. That is what we define as a schedule margin key. The float, the cushioning period, the before and after, they are defined in the working days. For example, here there are some examples given like plant 1710, schedule margin key 00001, 002. What is the opening period? What is the float before date, float after date? All these dates are defined here. This is to take care of any unexpected situation during manufacturing to make the commitment date of the production order to meet it. These kind of floats are defined. Again, these floats have to be defined according to your business needs. That is why we can see here there are some schedule margin key without any float numbers. There are some schedule margin key with a big float number. There are some schedule margin key with a very small float numbers. That has to be defined based on business need. Next one is that here we are defining what is the MRP group parameters. Right now, when we have defined for individual materials, assign some parameters, those things we can do them. But if you want to assign an MRP group to a material and then define all the parameters to the MRP group, then whatever we defined in MRP group, they will be assigned to this particular material. All these parameters will be copied. So these MRP groups is defined through the configuration transaction OPPR. When you enter here, enter the plant, then go inside by entering the MRP group. So here we can see various parameters like what is the frequency of planning, how to export bill of material, what is the order type to be used when you are converting planned order, what is the planning horizon to be used, how the scheduling has to be carried out. Apart from above, there are many more parameters what we have shown here. Please click all these parameters and understand how the parameters are defined, because instead of going and defining all these parameters individually, by defining them in the MRP group and then assigning the MRP group in the material master, you can bring all the settings here. See, for example, the order types. What is the order type which has to be default whenever the material is converted into production order? This is defined here for this material group, MRP group. Similarly, whenever there is a configuration settings to configure all the plant parameter for the material requirement planning. This is at the plant level. Earlier we discussed at the MRP group level. Now it is the plant group level. So now we enter the plant and press the maintain. We go inside. Again we see the similar screen where we see that what is the frequency of planning, how to export bill of materials, what is the order to be used, what is the planning horizon, what is the scheduling, those kind of things. Please note that whenever you are copying a plant from another plant to another plant, when you are creating a plant by copying another plant, many plant parameters may be copied, but it is important to maintain some specific parameters in the MRP plant parameters. So please check, even if you are copying some settings from another plant, we need to check all the parameters whether they are copied here or not. Now for example, this is a production conversion. Here we are talking about production order types. And then another important thing is that what are the configuration settings which are required for the configuration settings which are required to the material availability check. So here the material availability check is very important for how the materials have to be checked, right? So that material availability check is done through defining checking rule, then checking group, and then combination of checking rule and checking group are combined to create the scope of check. That is how it is defined. First we start with the checking rule. Checking rule is defined here. Checking rule is that when we have to create the checking the availability check, like during sales order creation or during delivery creation or during production order, during planning, those kind of things. The checking rule will work along with checking group only. So checking group is how to accumulate the requirements. How to accumulate the requirements. That is what is defined here in the checking group. So whether individual requirements or cumulative requirements to be considered, or to block the material for other users availability until availability check is completed, or to accumulate requirement or confirmed quantities while carrying out availability check. And also the checking, the group is assigned to the material master in the MRP3 view. Now you can see that now checking group is assigned in the MRP3 view of material master, the field of availability check, right? So these checking rule and checking group, these are combined. So checking rule and checking group are combined to create scope of check. That is done through the menu part shown here or transaction OPJJ. Finally, this is the settings which is help to define what is the how the availability check has to be carried out. Now here we can see that availability check, right? That checking group or availability check, the SP, which is the stock and plan requirement. Checking rule, which is during the production or planning, during the planning process, what are the parameters has to be considered? Like what are the stocks have to be considered? What are the future supplies have to be considered? What are the requirements have to be considered? All these things are defined. Okay, this is very important settings, and every SAP production planning consultant and every SAP production planning end users and power users should know about this. In summary, scope of check is used to do availability of materials. Checking rule defines whether it is done during like different stages of orders like sales order or planned order or production order. Checking group determines how accumulation of requirements have to be carried out. So next is the BOM usage. BOM usage defines the usage of BOM in specific application in SAP. So for example, is it a design or production or costing? Configuration path is shown here. Please take note, whatever the standard configuration is sufficient. Let us not do any new configuration which are not required, which are unnecessarily complicating things. Now we can see some example of specific BOM usage. For example, design BOM will include all the components of the product and the technical data from design point of view. This BOM is not generally linked to any other purpose design. And the production BOM contain all the items required for production and assembly point of view. Here only items relevant to production data are required. The production BOM does not require any packaging materials required for this kind of activities or the plant maintenance, right? Like this, the BOM usage have to be defined clearly. Now see, whatever available as the BOM usage, let us try to use them. So unless don't do any additional configurations, which is not required actually. Next is BOM status. BOM status is used to define that how the BOM can be used in any application area or not. The configuration path for BOM status is given here. For example, for costing purpose, while defining the BOM status, usage in costing area is defined. Similarly, for MRP, the indicators like exposure MRP, release for orders, MRP, those kind of parameters are defined. MRP only reads BOMs whose BOM status at least one of these indicators. BOM status also defines whether the BOM is active or not. So BOM status indicator also important. So when you go into the BOM now, when you click on this header details, then we can see that what is the BOM status of these items. Next is the BOM item category. BOM item category defines the attributes and functions of BOM item. It controls the field and also the selections of detailed screens in BOM maintenance. Configuration path is shown here. BOM can contain different type of items related to manufacturing the production order. For example, it may contain pipeline items, or it may contain stock items, or it may contain document items, or it may contain text items. Like these different items will be there. Those item categories are defined here. For example, stock items, they are defined with the item category L. If you take, there are document items, they are defined with the item category D. Then there are variable size items, they are defined with the item type R. Like this, there are different item categories are there. The different item categories are defined through this in the bill of materials so that we can use them. Also, the different items, the same item which is valuated material, but it has to be used like a different item category in BOM. For the specific BOM, you can select that particular item category and use it. So it will be applicable only to that BOM. It is not applicable to other BOMs. That also we can do. Next, BOM application. BOM application controls usage of the bill of material in the specific areas. For example, MRP run cost estimation calculation will use the BOM for the respective BOM application. Menu path is shown here. BOM display at multi-levels using transaction CS12 can be done for different BOM applications. It is required to display only the costing BOM to certain users. Separate BOM application to be created to display the BOM only to costing users. Similarly, the BOM application like for inventory management or for costing, process manufacturing, production general, those things. Mostly the PP team, they used to have the production general PP01 is the BOM application which is being used. But there are different items are there. Please explore them. Next, we'll talk about configuration related to work centers. Here, it starts with the work center category. Work center category is a major classification of work center by SAP. It is configured through the menu bar shown here. Some examples of work center categories are machine, processing unit, labor, etc. Work center category controls the field selection inside the work center also. Next is the standard value parameter. Standard value parameter is one of the required settings to calculate the conversion cost incurred in the work center during manufacturing. These parameters have to be defined one by one. For example, when the work center is used in use, you may consume power, labor, setup time, depreciation, steam, etc. These costs incurred during conversion will be captured through the activity. Link to the master data is established as follows. Like parameters, these standard value parameters are assigned to the standard value key. Standard value key will be assigned to the work center. Work center will be assigned to the routing. Routing is assigned to the costing. Like this is going. Next settings is the standard value key. It is very important to capture the cost incurred in the work center. That is done through standard value key. Standard value key contains the activities. One standard value key can contain up to 6 activities. Each activity refers to cost. We can also capture time, and also we can capture the cost, and we can make them as mandatory or not. All these things we can do. Please note that one work center can have only one standard value key. Next is the shift sequence, because in each factory, in each companies, there may be a different shift sequences. If there are any specific shift sequences required, those things can be used. This will be useful mainly in the scheduling activities. The shift sequences are defined in this configuration. Shift sequence is used to define the specific working pattern, like weekly holidays, number of shift, working hours for each shift, and also capacity is calculated from working hours. There are mainly 3 ways to define the capacity for each work center, like normal capacity, available interval capacity, interval and shift. So normal capacity is defined through the working hours. Available interval capacity is defined for specific duration. Interval and shift is defined in the machine or industry works. Next, we will discuss about the control key. This is one of the parameters we discuss in various places. This is defined through the menu bar shown here. So the control key, as we discussed, it was referred during our discussion routing, work center, production order, many areas, because it is controlling many activities like scheduling, determining capacity requirements, automatic goods receipt, then printing of operations or orders, carrying out costs, external operation. All these things are defined through the control key. This is one of the important parameters. In the session on production orders, we discussed that various activities are carried out, like during creation, automatic release of production order can be done, or during release, automatic printing can be done. Metal availability, PRT availability, capacity availability can be done during creation or release. All these things are facilitated through production order, configuration of production order types and scheduling profile. First, we will discuss production order type related configurations. Here we can see menu path to define many settings of production order types and also the scheduling types. Later, when we discuss these settings with the required transaction codes to configure them, if you have any doubt in the menu path, please come back to this page and check the menu path. All these things are covered in the same tree, so it is easy to collect them in the one page itself. The settings of order types are starting with the defining the order type. The transaction is OPJH. This order type is independent of the plant. It is important that the order type has to have the number range. So you have to define the number range before that. So in the production order types, we have the parameters related to like a control parameters, cost controlling, and then status management. Those things are maintained. Once we define the order type, we have to define what are all the order type dependent parameters. Transaction is OPL, right? So these settings are depending on the plant. Okay, order types are independent of plant, but order type dependent parameters are depending on the plant. Here the configuration for the selected order type, we can configure how the production version is selected, how the routing is selected, what are the increments in the operation numbers, how the BOM is applied, what is the alternate MRP controller, what is the quality inspection plan assigned. Those things we can configure in this order type. Next, we'll talk about scheduling parameters for the order types. Here, how scheduling has to be carried out. For example, whether the order type should have the backward scheduling, forward scheduling, backward then forward, or forward then backward, whether it has to be an automatic scheduling, all these things are triggered here. Sometimes no, we have to do the scheduling by manually. But if you select this parameter here, automatic scheduling, system will do the scheduling during the when you are creating the production order itself. Next, we'll define what is the checking control, which defines the steps in case of when you create and release the order. Here we have to maintain the parameters for both the created and release orders. So for example, when you are doing the creation, what are the things has to happen? Material available to happen or not, PRT available to happen or not, capacity available to happen or not. During release, what kind of availability check to happen? Those things are defined again separately for creation, separately for release. Next is the production scheduling profile. So though it is not a mandatory configuration step in the PP, but it helps a lot to do some many activities, many functions can be facilitated through the scheduling profile. For example, when you have the scheduling profile, this is attached to the metal master through work scheduling view. So this scheduling profile, when you define like when an order is created, whether the automatic release has to happen, or when the order is released, printing and scheduling of the order to happen, whether material availability to happen or not, automatic goods receipt to happen or not, how many confirmations can be done, whether batch management can be handled or not, or what is the order type which are linked. All those things we can handle here in the production scheduling profile. So now we will discuss how the order type for the material is determined and a production order is created for the material. So because we do a lot of configurations, no, we should understand this application. Order type is defined based on the production scheduling profile directly, or order type is defined through the production scheduling profile which was assigned to the production scheduler, or order type is defined through the MRP group parameters. In the MRP group parameters, we will define these order types, or order type can be defined in plant parameters. So when a production order is created for a material, order type can be different, can be determined through various sources. So please take note of these things. The sequence, how the sequence will be, this sequence it will be there, right? If it is not there, it will go to the next steps. If you want to have some check how it is happening, please do it. Okay, you need to understand. Only if you do some different kind of things, only you can see. For example, production scheduling profile, you maintain one order type. In MRP group parameters, different order type you select. Then you run this system, create the production order, check what's happening. Like that only you can learn SAP. Okay. Right. So in this session, we talked about the basic configurations requirement for production planning related to metal master, MRP, bill of material, work centers, routing, scheduling, production orders, metal availability check, those kind of things. With these things, we complete this course on SAP Production Planning. Next, we will start SAP course in few weeks. Please give your feedback to improve flow and contents when we are continuing with the SAP course. Thank you all. See you in course. Bye until then.